Hello there, it's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Bee. Now, yesterday I sewed this lovely dress. I'm just so pleased with it. It fits me perfectly and I think it's as cute as. Although I did most of the video out of shot, which is so annoying. Well, yeah, you know, I don't know. Now, my scraps, I really don't have a lot. And I don't really have enough to do a scarf in one length. And I don't have enough of this contrasting sort of similar colour lining to do a backing of it. I wouldn't be able to do it in one strip. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a patchwork strip, a long strip, and then I'm going to sew it together to make an infinity scarf. So I have my machine set up here, and these are quite roughly cut, so I am going to have to keep an eye on it. And it is just a matter of doing straight line sews and then sewing it up into a strip. So I know this is all I've got, and I'm just going to make do. And of course, if I did have enough cloth to make one single scarf, I think it would be just a bit too bright, so I quite like the idea of it broken up. So yes, I do have a bit of sewing to do, and I just have to make sure that I sew one then the other and then one then the other, and then it's a matter of sort of laying it out and adjusting it. Okay, so that's my sewing. I'm going to sew a patchwork circular scarf out of my leftovers. Now, if you were to buy the fabric to make this scarf, I would suggest that you buy 2 lots of, can you buy a 1/4 of a yard? I know you can buy a 1/4 of a metre in England, so what's important is, even if they're roughly cut, that you keep one line straight, so that you don't have to trim too much. You just trim the top line. And I'm making sure that I'm sewing it on the same side each time. It's very easy to do, just sort of turn it by accident. Okay, now there's no pattern to this at all. I'm not even concentrating, I'm just doing. So you can see here that this is slightly different, and I am just making use of the top line. Okay, well, I'll be back in a few and I will have a long strip, a doubled over strip. So, not going far. Okay, so I'm back now. So what I've done is I've made sure that the starting point is always at the top, so that if I've got one that's slightly bigger, and that one overhangs terribly, then I know that I've got all the top bits at the top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put those 2 bits together, and then I am going to sew these together. I'm not going to sew this end, but I'm going to sew along the top and I'm going to sew along the bottom. So yes, you could use pins. Pins are good. Pins are your friend. And yeah, also making sure that all my outside edges are actually on the outside, because it's easy enough to do when you're doing something simple. I find that you can just kind of not get carried away. Okay, so I'm keeping an eye that I am actually sewing both pieces, and you can see how roughly cut they are. And whereas most things are in the cutting, it's not happening for me. Okay, so I'm nearly coming down this end. Now one thing to notice, I am in shot, is that I've got an inch at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a pin in the other side, and this will just keep it straight for when I sew the other side. Okay, and now I'm just going to go up the other side. Can take that pin out now, and this time I need to be aware that some of it's a bit overhanging. One thing you do have to be aware of is that I've got more grip on the satin than I do on, they call it lining at my local shop. I have no idea what it is. It's very soft. And you can see that some of the pieces are large and some of the pieces are quite small. This gives me a nice contrast. I think sometimes it's very easy to overthink things. There we go. So I've come to the end. I'm just going to check that I've sewn both pieces together. And if I have come off, I'm literally just going to go over them again. And that's great. It's as simple as now I've left the end open so I can literally, and it's wide enough to put my whole hand through and pull it out. Just pushing my corners out, a nice sharp edge, and give it a shake into shape. So now there's well, I'm going to say there's no easy way to do this. That's not exactly true. There are easier ways to do it. What I'm going to do is, with my sewing machine, I have the bottom layer of the scarf and the folded over end, and I'm going to push away the top end. So all I'm sewing now is the inside of the tube. And if it takes me a couple of goes to be happy that it's underneath the machine, then that's fine. So I've got my top here out of the way. And I'll just join this up. A couple of reverse stitches, keep it as nice as possible. Take it out of the machine. I'm going to cut the bobbin threads because I don't want it pulling. And then I'm going to take this top one and fold it over. Yeah. and fold it all over so it's all tucked in. Now I can just fold it over and sew again along that line, there's no reason why not to, but to give it a nice curve, what I'd like to do is fold it over the top, which is slightly more difficult. There is a sort of natural pin to it, so I've managed to just fold it round with my fingers, and then I'm going to put a couple of pins just so I can keep these edges nice and neat. Tuck that all in. Ow. This is why I don't like pins, I'm not very good with them. You know, people think that it's because I'm OCD or something. It's just that I'm not very good with pins. I am not. And there we are. So I can now put that under the machine and sew quite happily, and I know I've got a nice tucked in edge. I'm going to place that under the machine. It's got quite a few layers to do, and it's just on the edge of the T. So if I need to encourage it, then I need to encourage it. If I pull this tight, then that should stay in position, and the stitches before will hold that in place. So couple of stitches and a couple of reverse stitches so that it's all neatly in place, and then I have to trim in the ends that I didn't manage to tuck in. And there we have our nice circular scarf that's not too bright, and that's what I was trying to avoid. And then we can fold it over if we want. We can just leave it hanging down, and in a way it's great because it'll break up my lines so that it will make me look slimmer. Okay, so not just to wear with the dress, but to wear with jeans. Alright, thank you so much for watching. My name's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Bee.